So welcome to lesson 4 in your measuring crime and deviance section of the course. This lesson we're going to focus on assessment skills and have a look at the first of your 10-mark questions, which is all around AO1 knowledge and understanding and AO2 application. So for this lesson you're going to need your measuring crime and deviance booklets. You're going to spend 20 minutes planning an answer, so going through your notes, going through summaries, going through the fact sheets that you've done, and drawing that together into a very detailed plan for an essay. You're then going to spend 10 minutes writing an actual answer, so this is going to be submitted on Teams. You need to be careful with your timing. One of the things you do need to practice is making sure that you can write the answer to your questions within the time frame given. So for all your sociology questions, it should be a mark a minute, if not slightly less on some of the shorter ones. But for a 10 marker, allow yourself 10 minutes maximum to actually put your answer together. Submit a copy of that onto Teams, and I'll also take in a written copy as well, just so that I can write the feedback on that, because it's clearer if I mark it on paper as well. So 10 mark questions occur in this section, and they're focused on in what way. So you'll be asked to talk about in what way something may affect something else. With the 10 markers, there is no evaluation. It's really, really important. You do not need to give alternative perspectives, different viewpoints. You don't need to put in counter arguments. You will waste your time and you don't get any marks for it. Even if it's accurate and correct, it's not creditable, because they just want to understand what you know and the links to society. So in terms of the spread of mark allocation, you're looking at 6 marks for your knowledge and understanding. At the top end, for a full 6 marks, you need to show excellent knowledge and understanding. So that's detailed, in-depth, and it must be sociological. So you can use pieces of research, you can use the key terms. You must make sure it's sociology rather than just common sense understanding about crime. There will be at least 3 very well developed points. This will flow quite nicely, so 3 chunky paragraphs. It'll be logical and structured. And it is relevant to the question. Don't just write down everything you know about the topic. You must make sure that what you are writing is clearly linked back to the question that you're being asked. The AO2 application carries 4 marks. You need to be able to apply sociological material throughout your answer. So for every one of those paragraphs of knowledge, have a couple of application points in there. So this is the question that you are going to tackle. You might want to pause the video just to write that down. We're going to be looking at the way in which official statistics only represent a partial view of crime and deviance in the UK. So your knowledge and understanding is going to be about official statistics and how or why official statistics are only a partial perspective, so why they don't give us full detailed information, what the flaws are and things like that. Your application here is going to be statistical data that kind of supports this argument that they're not a full view of crime and deviance. So to break it down for your knowledge and understanding, remember you need 3 chunky paragraphs here. You're going to need the key terms and definitions of sort of official statistics and where they kind of come from. So things like the information on page 8, so how it's recorded by official agencies, so things like the police records, the court records, government records, Home Office records, conviction rates and things like that, prison populations. So there'll be the key things that you're putting into 3 paragraphs. Remember, you don't need to cover all of them. You need 3 very chunky detailed points. Bring in relevant sociology. So for example, Holdaway's definition of official statistics might be useful to draw in. Making sure that you use the different key terms. You can bring in studies which kind of show there are issues with official statistics. So that might be a comparison to victim studies or to the self-report data and things like that. So you might be talking about what that issue is. Remember, your question is about why it's partial, so you need to tell me what it is and why it's partial in that AO1. All right, so things like the dark figure of crime, for example. Your application will be related to specific data. So you're going to need to pick out a couple of those key trends, those pieces of information that talk about how and what official statistics tell us. So it might be from your research of the prison population and how it sort of shows the demographic spread within prison in comparison to the demographic spread of populations across the country. You might be bringing in things like police clear-up rates, police sort of targeted particular crimes and how that can skew the data. You can also talk about it being partial in terms of how data is gathered. So the fact that it only takes account of 3% of all crimes according to the British Crime Survey. So things like that need to be brought in into each and every paragraph when you are talking about how and why this particular type of official statistics is a partial view of crime and deviance. Okay, so the mark bands are up on screen. The top level 4 for your AO1 is all the depth, the detail, accuracy, and very, very specifically 3 develop points. If you look further down to level 3, you drop quite significantly with 1 develop point and others that are vague. So you've got to make sure that each of those paragraphs are clear, they're chunky, and they're detailed. Every single one of them should contain the same volume of detail. Don't spend ages on the first and begin to filter off on the second 2. The top of mark band 4 for AO2, apologies, I put the wrong number of marks in there, but that's worth 4 marks. This is your link to relevant sociological material. So the data, the stats, the methodological issues with surveys, with statistics, with the agencies that gather them, and so on. So a really good way to structure your 10 mark answer is to make sure that you've identified 3 very, very clear problems with the official statistics and why they're partial. Signpost that examiner, make sure that they can see exactly what you're talking about and what you're linking it to. So for example, one way official statistics is a partial representation of crime and deviance could be through the fact that it ignores the dark figure of crime. Another way, it only covers 3% according to the BCS crime survey. Make that link to sociology, so it can be explained by the fact that the police records perhaps are only a partial view because they can only record the statistics where the police decide to follow up, decide to process a report of a crime and things like that. Make a link to further knowledge and understanding, so how and why that might be the case. So for example, you might be talking about police discretion. You could be talking about the way in which the police classify crime, and then make a connection to an example for the AO2. So link it through to statistical data, link it through to ideas about how the police have got particular targets that they've got to meet, what those targets are, how they respond to moral panics, those kinds of things. And repeat that 3 times. Make sure that you identify in that very, very first sentence exactly what that issue is with official statistics that make it a partial view. The easier you make it for the examiner to pick out exactly what you're talking about, the more sort of effective it is, and it keeps you structured in your answer. So always start with a link back to the question and then finish off that example with a link back to the question. So how does it show the point that you've made? So your task is to plan this out for 20 minutes, Planning out questions is a really, really important part of revision. It's one of the best ways in which you can structure your notes and your information to meet the requirements of the exam. Then time yourself, right? Do a 10-minute answer. Don't go over the 10 minutes. I do need to trust you to actually sort of make sure you do it in 10 minutes. You need to know what you can do in 10 minutes. You need to be able to evaluate your own answers. How do you need to improve? What do you need to improve? Is your timing an issue? And you also need to be prepared for walking into that exam hall and knowing exactly what you can achieve in 10 minutes of time. So don't spend half an hour writing me the perfect answer, because that is not going to help you. That's not the point of practicing questions like this. Once you're done, submit the question on to Teams. I'll start to have a look through those, but also I do want to take them in as paper-based answers so we can work through them. And at a later date, we're going to begin to expand some of these 10-mark questions into the bigger questions for this section as well. So it's really important that I have a written copy. So good luck. Any questions or problems, drop a message onto Teams or drop me an email. And remember, spend some quality time planning, all right, and then have a go without notes at that question.